The Cincinnati Bengals have had an impressive two-season stretch. 2 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl, and this past January, they were in the AFC Championship again. The Bengals are a serious contender and appear to be for seasons to come, but with a lot of success can come a lot of drama, specifically when it comes to having to pay your star player, and that's the Bengals' current issue. Their big three all need deals soon. Joe Burrow is going to warrant a massive contract, and the Bengals can go ahead and start negotiating, even though he won't be a free agent technically until after the 2024 season because of his fifth-year option. Ja'Marr Chase isn't even eligible for an extension right now, but it's coming up on the horizon. He won't be a free agent until the 2025 season once Cincinnati makes the obvious decision to pick up his option. That leaves the third and most overlooked piece on the Bengals offense, and that's Tee Higgins, who will be a free agent after this year if he doesn't get an extension. And trust me, Cincinnati does not want him to hit the open market because he's legitimately a #1 wide receiver. Tee Higgins could be a top pass catcher on a lot of NFL rosters, and he's gonna get paid as such. PFF projects him to get a 4-year, $97 million contract. That's $24.25 million per season. For context, Stephon Diggs' average annual value is $24 million flat. Even in the 2 years with Ja'Marr Chase on the roster, Tee Higgins has still been spectacular and performed as a #1. Last season, Higgins had over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns off 74 receptions. He had 4 games with over 100 yards too. But Higgins did face a lot of bumps in the road. He suffered a concussion in week 1 and was also involved in the play that caused Damar Hamlin to collapse. I have to imagine that was a tough situation for Higgins too. He's been a difference maker for the Bengals in all 3 of his seasons in Cincinnati, which have all been pretty similar. He had over 1,000 yards and 74 receptions with 4 100-yard games in 2021 too, but he had 1 less touchdown with 6. Still, his biggest performance of the year was in the Super Bowl. He led the Bengals in receiving with 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. As a rookie, Higgins had 900 yards and 6 touchdowns on 68 catches. He had 2 games with over 100 yards and 1 with 99. He immediately helped the Bengals receiving core, but he's been overshadowed by Ja'Marr Chase, and the same thing goes for his rookie year. Higgins was good, but it was all about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was the first overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. He was expected to be the Bengals' savior, and he did just that. Burrow was the Week 1 starter, and he showed a ton of promise that he could be the future in Cincinnati. His best game of the season actually came in an overtime loss to the Browns in Week 7, where Burrow ended up becoming the first rookie in NFL history to throw for at least 400 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and record a rushing touchdown in a single game. Unfortunately, his rookie year was cut short in Week 11 after he suffered a torn ACL and MCL against Washington. Burrow played in 10 games and passed for 2,688 yards and 13 touchdowns to 5 interceptions with a 65.3 completion percentage. Now, he was able to recover and return, and to say that he was better would be an understatement. He went on to win Comeback Player of the Year, and his completion percentage jumped to 70.4, which led the league. He had 4,611 yards, 34 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. In Week 16, he threw for 525 yards in a game, which was the 4th most in NFL history. He had 4 touchdowns in the win over the Ravens, and it clinched a winning record for the first time since 2015. Cincinnati went on to win the AFC North and got hot in the playoffs. The Bengals ended up making it all the way to the Super Bowl after knocking off the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. It was a remarkable and exciting run, but unfortunately, it did end with a loss to the Rams. There were a ton of questions of whether or not their recent success was a fluke or not, but Burrow shut those up last season by playing even better in a lot of ways. He completed 68.3% of his passes for 4,475 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Burrow was named to his first Pro Bowl, and the Bengals returned to the AFC Championship, where Kansas City finally got their revenge, beating Cincinnati. Joe Burrow has had a lot of success in his short time in the league, and he's gonna get paid a ton of money. PFF predicts that his contract will be 4 years, $214 million. That's good for $53.5 million per season. That would surpass Lamar Jackson for the largest average per year. The Bengals are gonna have to start working on extensions for Burrow and Tee Higgins, but they don't have to worry about Ja'Marr Chase just yet. Cincinnati will be allowed out to begin negotiations next offseason, but like Burrow, the Bengals will have Chase tied up on his 5th-year option. Once he does get extended though, it's going to be for an insane amount. The wide receiver market has continued to climb, and Chase will benefit a lot from that, as he should. He's been one of the best players in the league since he came onto the scene in 2021 after the Bengals selected him 5th overall. Chase played at LSU alongside Burrow, and the two did not skip a beat. As a rookie, Chase had over 100 yards 5 times, had a game with 97 yards, and recorded over 200 yards in a game twice. His 266 yards in Week 17 versus Kansas City are the most by a rookie in a single game. Chase had 1,455 yards, the most by a rookie in a single year. He caught 81 passes with 13 touchdowns, and of course, the Bengals then made it all the way to the Super Bowl. And in that postseason run, Chase broke another rookie record with 368 yards. He was named the Offensive Rookie of the Year, was a second-team All-Pro, and made his first of 2 consecutive Pro Bowls. Chase did miss 5 games in 2022 after he suffered a fractured hip, but didn't miss a beat when he was on the field. Chase still surpassed 1,000 yards. He had 4 games with over 100 yards, 1 with 97 yards, caught 87 passes, and scored 9 touchdowns. Chase has already well solidified himself as one of the best wide receivers in the game, and his time for a big deal is coming up quick. The 3 big faces of the Bengals for the past 2 seasons have been Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tee Higgins. But who would be that 4th face on their Mount Rushmore? Well, I'd have to say it would be Joe Mixon, but how much longer will he actually be in Cincinnati? Mixon has been a consistent contributor for the Bengals. He was a 2017 second rounder, and in 6 years, he's rushed for over 1,000 yards 3 times and made the Pro Bowl in 2021. Mixon did sign a 4-year, $48 million contract in 2020, but he may be released before the regular season. There's no more guaranteed money left on that deal, and he'll be nearly a $13 million cap hit. Honestly, it makes sense for the Bengals to move on there. Cincinnati also just drafted a running back in the 5th round, Chase Brown, who just rushed for 1,645 yards and 10 touchdowns in his last season at Illinois. Unfortunately for him, I think the writing may be on the wall for Joe Mixon, but only time will tell if his time in Cincinnati is really over. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to be good next season, whether or not Joe Mixon is on the roster. But what if they lose one of their big 3? Joe Burrow is no doubt the most important player on the team and is one of the most valuable players in the league. Jamar Chase is a top wide receiver, and Tee Higgins may be the most underrated player in the league. The single most important thing for the Bengals for the next 2 off seasons is going to be making sure that all 3 of those guys get extended. Cincinnati is a perennial Super Bowl contender with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tee Higgins together, and the Bengals really can't afford to let any of them leave.